Hi everyone, I'm Joe. Today it's time for me to do my last monthly reading wrap-up of the year for December 2021. I have no idea where 2021 went. One moment it was the early few months of the year, and now it's basically over. So it's been a very strange year, and for many people they're glad to get it over with, considering there's still a pandemic going on and all the disaster that has wreaked on the world. But regardless, it has been a good year in total, and I have had a good final month of the year. Although, before I get to the last few books that I read of the year, I just want to mention the fact that I got 4 Christmas cards from fellow booktubers, which I am very pleased and very proud that I have, from Rachel, Kelsey, Raya and Andrea. So I'm really quite pleased that I've got these, and indeed I will be keeping these for a very long time to come, as I do with all cards that people send me that are unusual, like booktubers and things, because I've actually got cards from, for instance, Rachel from 5 or 6 years ago, as it were. So, the first book that I read in December was an ebook, so I have no book to wave around next to me in the air now, and that is Elder Race, written by Adrian Tchaikovsky. This is a science fiction novella. It's one that I really enjoyed and one that is very cleverly written. The synopsis of it starts off in a curious way, because basically this is a world that seems like a fantasy world. There is some kind of new threat or danger in this world, some sort of demon that they consider it to be. And this one particular character, called Linus, she basically is tasked to go and sort this thing out, this demon out, whatever it happens to be. She doesn't really know, nobody really does, but it's a major problem, and she is basically told that she sort of has to really deal with it. However, she doesn't go alone. She gets one of the sort of the elders of the title of the book to help, who is considered a sorcerer, called Elder Noi, and this person and Linus, they go on a journey to deal with this demon, whatever it may be. And I don't want to say too much more because it is a novella, and therefore it's shorter. If I say too much, it'll give away plot points. But suffice to say, keep in mind that this may be a fantasy world. Apparently, there is a demon on the loose, or maybe there's also a sorcerer in Noi helping. Remember, this is a science fiction novella, so the way that it is blatantly science fiction, you can't mistake it for science fiction, but it's got that blatant, also strong undertones of fantasy. It's a strange mixture, one that's really cleverly written, and not one that I come across that often, where it feels very strongly of science fiction, but also very strongly of fantasy, both quite distinctive from each other, and yet they actually blend really well. It was cleverly written because of that. The characters are great, plot line's great, and it's a novella that I really enjoyed and I would heavily recommend. I mean, it would be a good start, frankly, to anybody looking to get into something by Adrian Tchaikovsky, especially as his books tend to be a little bit longer for the most part, from what I can tell. So, it might be a good start for him. The next book that I read also happened to be an ebook, so I've got nothing to wave around again. And that is Inside Man, written by K.J. Parker. K.J. Parker also uses the pseudonym Tom Holt, who I have somewhere on the shelf behind me, which he writes under that for humour. This is a fantasy novella, so again it's quite short. I would be careful about saying too much to give away plotline and such, spoilers. But suffice to say, this is a kind of a sequel follow-on from his first novella called Prosper's Demon, which I read start of last year, I believe, unless I'm mistaken, which I liked but I didn't love, and that one I had difficulty talking about because a week after reading Prosper's Demon, I couldn't even tell you what the plot line of the novella was, and indeed I still can't. I would have to actually check it up now if I wanted to talk about it. This one I actually can talk about the plot line, because it's more memorable and it's more interesting, and I enjoyed this frankly more than Possible Demon. I thought this was a better, stronger novella, more tightly written, and the focus was better. And indeed the plot line was quite simple, and I don't want to give away too much spoilers, but it's simple enough that I don't need to. Essentially, there is a demon. Obviously this is Earth, but where demons and heaven and hell, that sort of thing exist. A demon is basically doing some quite fairly menial work after being considered fragile for previous events that his work entailed. So he's on sort of fairly light work. He's not a very ambitious demon by many standards, and he's considered a somewhat, some people consider him almost lazy, a bit, blasé about the idea of, evil triumphing and, Satan ruling the world. People don't consider him to be, to have his heart into it for some reason. Anyway, his job is to essentially hang out in a monastery full of monks, obviously, and try to get inside their heads, not physically, but mentally, and essentially sort of give them thoughts, sort of darker thoughts, and sort of tempt them into the path of Satan and evil and darkness, rather than the enlightened mindset that the monks traditionally have. And essentially he finds one monk in particular who realises what he is and realises that he's actually in his head. So this is a psychological novella, I should say, set literally in somebody's mind, the monk's mind, between the monk and his thought pattern and the demon, and other entities as well, which the demon interacts with when he's not in the monk's head. It's a strange concept, but one that is really written very cleverly and really well, and I really enjoyed this. I mean, the characters are fantastic. The viewpoint of obviously this demon being literally inside someone's head and communing via thought, as well as obviously a mental connection, is really curious, and I really did enjoy it overall. I thought it was a very interesting concept, and one that I have seen in the past a long time ago, I think once or twice, but not done like this. This was novel and curious, and I would very heavily recommend this as well. And frankly, by the way, you do not need to have read Possible Demon. It may be a sequel or a follow-on of sorts, but you can read it as a standalone. I mean, I virtually did, because I couldn't remember Possible Demon, as it didn't work out for me as well. This certainly did, so you could read this entirely alone without even reading Possible Demon. So, it's that good, frankly. The next book that I read was The Lefthanded Booksellers of London, written by Garth. So finally a physical book to ride round. Now the concept of this one is that this is a version of Earth where demons exist, not in quite the same way as obviously the previous book by Parker. And this one though is set in London, obviously, where it is obviously, as the title is giving you to believe, about booksellers, specifically magical booksellers. Basically, magicians and warlocks and sorcerers, whatever you want to call them, exist in this world. They are there to essentially sort of stop, demonic entities and evil, sort of taking over and breaking through, and other evil dimensions from creating rifts where horrible things will happen and that sort of thing. And essentially the left-handed part refers to not merely whether you use your scissors in your left hand or your right hand, but it actually refers to the fact that if you are a left-handed bookseller, then you're essentially a kind of a frontline magical troupe that deals with demons directly, and if you are a right-handed bookseller, then essentially you are the strategic planning side of dealing with demons. So basically you're telling the right-handed ones tell the left-handed ones which demons to basically go and basically beat up, to put it bluntly. The concept is interesting but simple, and indeed that's one area that I think let this book down to me, and whilst it made me think that I liked it but I didn't love it, because the concept was interesting but not truly astonishing. The writing was strong but not astonishing, and same as the characters and the setting. It was all, everything was done very well, written well, good ideas, good concept and good execution, but it just didn't grab me to that degree. It just felt a little, not flat, but it just didn't have, I just didn't have the enthusiasm when I was reading it, for some reason. When I was reading this, I mean, it could have been phenomenal, and for some reason this didn't work. Now, it could have been just at that moment in time. I mean, I was at the time having to have real life things going on and multiple meetings that kept getting cancelled, and I was getting kind of very frustrated for a week or two during the start of December. So that could have played into the effect, and it probably did, to be honest. So I've got to give it a little bit of leeway here, but overall I did like it, because the concept is that there is a new sort of demonic entity in this world. At the same time as this, a woman who is not magical, at least as far as she's aware, she's coming to London to find her father because she doesn't know exactly who he is, and she basically gets mixed up in the Booksellers and, you know, the demon world, and events spiral outwards from there. It's fun, fairly fast paced and well written, but it didn't infuse me, but it could have just been me at that moment in time. The next book that I read was the complete Cosmicomics, written by Italo Calvino. This is an Italian author. This is a science fiction short story collection which I really liked, despite the fact that some of the short stories I didn't quite get where they were going, and the viewpoint is really strange, and this is a very peculiar book indeed. This is pretty much experimental science fiction, which, you know, I'm always happy to try. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. For this, it mostly worked. I mean, obviously it's a short story collection, so there are some short stories mostly towards the start that worked for me. Some of the later ones I didn't quite get as much, they didn't click with me. But, you know, that's a normal collection, and this was a strong collection, so I would recommend this. The idea is that they're all short stories based upon the character and the viewpoint of one character whose name doesn't have any vowels in it, called QFWFQ. Obviously it's not meant to be a name that you can actually pronounce out loud, hence why I'm spelling it out to you. This character, I just call him Q, is a entity that throughout the book seems to be there from literally from before the dawn of time, you know, when the universe was a void. He's there for the Big Bang, he's there for everything. He just seems to be sort of there, and yet at times he seems to be a formless just being that has got thought and a mind but no physical corporeal being that's floating around in space, essentially in a void. Other times he's actually becomes human and he's walking around Earth, and other times he's on other planets. So it's a very strange viewpoint because it's a being that literally changes what he is, or it is, or they is, or that, or she is. There's no, you know, gender pronouns cannot be attached to Q in this. They are a very strange individual, and rightly so, because it's all about the thought experiments. Basically, he takes scientific principles, and indeed he writes them down at the start of each short story. And essentially, Q, the protagonist, is having a adventure, a story, you know, whatever, based around some concept and some thought about that principle, or whatever it may be. It's hard to describe, and frankly not entirely easy to read at times. It's very strange and very peculiar, but something about it that just worked for me. I mean, for the most part, I mean, there's a lot of short stories, there's about 40 or something, at least. To be honest, I should have counted, but I forgot. But it just worked in a really interesting way, and I would quite like to read something, you know, full-length novel by him, where obviously there is a normal character that you can actually pronounce the name of, for example, would be quite nice, rather than having a character with no vowels in the name, which is challenging. And I would really recommend this. This is a very curious science fiction book, which I would recommend. And now the final, penultimate book I read this month, in fact, was Thud, written by Terry Pratchett. Yes, the name is a very short one. This is one of the City Watch books. Basically, these are the police force of the Discord equivalent of London, England, called Ankh-Morpork, where Pratchett is basically having fun to do with everything London based, and indeed in this case obviously being a City Watch novel, the police force. And this one essentially is the commander of the City Watch is having a problem because essentially it's there's a new focus, a new sort of undercurrent amongst the dwarfs living in the city that are bringing up certain racial memories and historic memories of them. Basically, there is an undercurrent of tension between them and the trolls because people are worried that there is an old ancient battle called the Battle of Coombe Valley where both sides ambush the other, as you do. This might actually happen again inside the city, which is bad news for everybody that happens to live in the city, which is massive. I mean, this is basically Discord London, so it's got a big population, very diverse. If there's tensions like this would be horrific and basically would be a bloodbath, and it really would destroy the city pretty much. So, Captain Samuel Vimes has to find out exactly what's going on, and also he has to make sure that at 6 PM every evening he gets back home to his 1-year-old son and reads him a bedtime story, because some things are just worth it. So it's quite funny at various times when he's there, he's trying to do like police things, really big serious things, and then he's there realising that actually it's like really close to 6 o'clock. He's there desperately running across the city, almost knocking people out of the way, punching people if needs be, desperately trying to get back home so he can read this story to his little son. And overall it's just a really fun novel, really interesting, lots of subtle political and social political subtext as they often are. This has got some really interesting concepts and one that I really liked. And the last thing I read this month was an interesting one because it directly relates to that, and that is, oh yes, Where's My Cow by T. Pratchett, edited by Melvyn Bragg. This is a picture book, and it is, as you would expect, very silly but very fun. It is indeed the picture book meant to be that Captain Vimes reads to his son every day at 6 PM in Thud. And this is frankly, it's very short but really well illustrated. And I will show you a single page of it. I don't want to say too much because it's that short though, spoil it I suppose. That is the artwork. I hope you can see those fairly well. I'll try to move my finger out of the way. And it's literally just pictures of Samuel Vimes in the little story that he's telling his son this story of where's his cow, a chicken's not a cow, it goes, cluck. This is not his cow because it's hippopotamus, it goes, and does a hippopotamus noise, whatever that happens to be. And it's just an odd little quirky little graphic novel, I suppose you could call it. That would only be of interest to Pratchett and Discord fans, but if you are, then it's worth reading because it's just nice. You don't get any further like unexpected character development or world development from this. Like some of the sub novels and like the extra novels do add certain little elements that you don't get in the main novels. This doesn't add anything as such, but it's just nice to see. And it's nice to see a visual element to the characters. I mean, you actually see, obviously this is a illustrator's point of view, but you get to see a version of a physical version of Vimes with some of the other characters as well. And it's just a nice novel to read. And frankly, the fact that this was the last thing I read in 2021, I'm happy with, because this was silly and fun, and that, to me, that's a perfect end to the year. It hasn't been exactly the nicest year, same as 2020 for most people. So having the last read to be a bit silly and irreverent, was something that I really enjoyed. So, with that said, that is it for this wrap up. If you've read any of these, then please leave a comment and we can have a talk about them. or if you want to know more about the books or anything, I'll try and tell you what I can. If you have any suggestions for me based on books you think I might enjoy based on these, then again leave a comment. I'm always happy to have suggestions on new authors, new subgenres, whatever. And with that said, that is it. So the links to these books will be found in the description box below, as well as my social media links, and that's in the next few weeks there will be lots of, well, not lots, a few end of year videos, you know, my favourite books, them kind of thing videos. And for the record, regarding the Discworld, I am aware that this year it's been dominated by Pratchett books and Discworld, which some people, you know, they might think, you know, my channel's a bit boring this year, because that's been like half my video this year has been Discworld, seemingly. I know it hasn't actually been half, but it seems like it. But it's just something that I've wanting to do for a very long time. It's like a personal project. So, you know, it may not always be interesting seeing Discworld review after Discworld review, but it's something that I feel like I need to do. So it will end at some point. I mean, I've still got quite a lot of books to review, but by mid-year in 2022, the reviews will actually finish, and I will officially, you know, be finished on my channel. Although in real life I will finish reading the books within about a month, so you know, it'll be a bit quicker. And with that said, that is it. So thank you for watching, and I'll see you another day, and have a good year everybody. I hope it's fun.